Hey, we're now live. So for some reason, my camera just doesn't seem to be working at the moment.
Sorry, I missed you for a moment. Sorry, what did you say? Your camera doesn't work.
My camera seems to not be working, so I'm just going to leave my camera off so we just see my face.
Yeah, that's fine.
But thank you so much for joining us here in the booth today. Sorry to everyone that we've had a few technical difficulties.
No worries.
It's bound to happen with this kind of event.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy to have you here. And since we already have a few people in the booth, I think we might as well kick it off.
Yeah, sure.
So my name is Abigail Khan, and I'm a business developer at Sky Energy. And today I'm joined by Aga Kwolek, who is a business development manager for aviation and shipping at South Pole. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us here
Yeah.
today, Aga. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's calling from London. I believe you're in the Netherlands. I believe we have some people from the US. So yeah, all
Yes,
over the world, I guess.
I think we
Different
have a
time zones.
very mixed audience, but it would be good if
Yeah.
people want to comment in the chat where they're coming from, so we see, we see how international our audience
Yeah, that
actually
would be
is.
great. Mm.
And just I'll give a brief introduction to what you do, Aga,
Yeah.
and then we'll jump in.
Yeah.
So within South Pole, Aga looks after aviation and shipping customers, supporting their requirements related to carbon compensation, ACA and CORSIA, emission calculation methodology, and climate neutral checkout.
That's right.
Aviation is in Aga's blood as she brings over 17 years of experience in the aviation industry from all angles. So there's business development, marketing, business analysis, and intelligence, and sales. She's been working for a couple of consultancies at a few airports, Heathrow and Warsaw, a couple of airlines such as SAS and Air Canada, ground handling companies, as well as the travel industry. Her academic background focused on commerce, and she's got both a master's and bachelor's degree in economics from Warsaw University of Life Sciences. She's been with South Pole for 2 years now. In this session, we'll be talking about South Pole's sustainability strategy and how they reduce their own business travel emissions. We will also hear some recommendations from Aga on what companies who are looking to reduce their emissions should focus on. At the end, there will be time for a Q&A, so please feel free to leave questions in the comment box. Please also check out our polls and the option to fly on SAF to COP26. So to kick us off, Aga, would you like to tell us a little bit about what South Pole do?
Of course, and thank you very much for this introduction. It was quite a long one, but
Quite an
I
introduction.
think we made it. So, of course, I can. Yes. So, Southpol is a Swiss company founded in Zurich 15 years ago by a few environmental entrepreneurs, and we're a leading climate action project developer and globally recognized advisor on climate action. And today, we are over 500 experts in 20 offices across 6 continents, and we have been growing continuously. And funny enough, I joined 2 years ago in London, and in London we were then 30 people, and today we're 90 people. So I think we must be doing something right. But also, I think it's also the fact that sustainability is such an up and coming topic at the moment, and we see that how many more clients we're dealing with, helping them under sustainability with their sustainability targets and building back
Mhm.
better, and that includes setting climate neutrality, net zero targets, and catalyzing the necessary financing for related actions. And the current situation, I think it's worth mentioning, really gives us
Mhm.
an opportunity to step back and include sustainability as part of the main agenda,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
to cover and include the environmental costs in daily business operations. And that's what we do together with our clients.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I think you're completely right. The past year and a half or so, we've really had the chance to step back, look at what we're doing, and ask ourselves, is this really what's right for the planet? And kind of how can we improve moving forward from here?
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
moving on from that, could you maybe tell me a little bit about South Pole's sustainability strategy and how you implement this in your work?
Yes, of course. So I think the most important thing to say is that we are actually walking the talk. So Southwell actually practices what it preaches, which means we also set our own sustainability goals of the highest social environmental standards. And when it comes to compensating for our carbon emissions, we follow exactly the same advice we give to our clients. So this means we
Mhm.
make every possible effort to reduce absolute emissions first, and only then we compensate for the residual emissions with high quality carbon projects.
Mhm.
And as few of examples I can give you, for our office, for example, we only use renewable energy.
Hmm.
We have paperless offices to avoid deforestation. And we
That's a good
also
one.
publish our achievements and further ambitions in our sustainability reports every year. We are
Hmm.
currently a climate neutral company, and a week ago we made a huge announcement that we have an ambition of becoming net zero by 2030.
Hmm.
And a few other activities I can think of. We have a greener policy when it comes to greener travel. And so we have implemented a new travel tool and process,
Hmm.
which enables data-driven targeted monitoring and management of travel emissions for the forthcoming net zero strategy.
Hmm.
We are already in some countries certified B Corp,
Yeah.
uh, but the ambition is for South Pole across the company to be certified B Corp and undergoing these impact assessments. And I don't know how many companies do that already, but we also have sustainable pension schemes. So we're ensuring with companies that are sustainable. So we're ensuring that the default pension providers across all offices are sustainable by the end of 2022.
Oh wow. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. It sounds like you guys are definitely walking the talk and showing that you know what you're doing with sustainability. And I think, yeah, all of these are really great ideas. But what we specifically work on and what our partnership is specifically focused on aviation. And I wanted to kind of get into this and ask you why you, as South Pole, thought it was important to focus on your aviation emissions.
Yes, sure. I mean, I have to be honest here. We actually focus on all the industries, to be fair. But
Yes.
perhaps because of my background, I think aviation is a very special industry, and I remain equally passionate about its recovery as about its decarbonization. But first, I think let's evaluate maybe the importance of the industry,
Mhm.
which is absolutely necessary and crucial to exist from both social and economic point of view. Uh,
Yeah,
but we need
definitely.
to remember the aviation sector actually contributes to just about, some say it's a lot, some say it's not a lot, 3% of global CO2 emissions. And as I said, like some people may say, oh, it's only 3%. Yes and no. Those 3% actually add up to, they did add up to 600 million tons of CO2 in 2019 only. And if it
Wow,
wasn't
yeah.
for COVID, growth in emissions would have continued.
Hmm.
And I also think that aviation is a very visible carbon emitter as opposed to more hidden emitters such as steel and cement industries, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I
Um,
mean, you can see it in the sky, right? When you're walking around,
Absolutely, absolutely,
you see
and
the
you may,
emissions.
and I also deal with clients in shipping industry, and you think like every 90% of everything comes in on ships, but
Hmm.
nobody really talks about it, nobody thinks about it. But when it's the travel, we always see it, we always notice it somehow. It's more
Hmm.
visible to the public. And I think also why we've concentrated on aviation is when you look at the scope 3 emissions, a lion's share falls under corporate travel actually. And
Hmm.
even for companies like ours, I mean, we're trying to run as low carbon intensive business model as possible, but we still need to be able to develop our projects in places otherwise impossible to reach. And I think especially now with being, at home for a year and a half, looking at the same walls almost every day,
Hmm.
and despite all the latest technologies and video conferences, we still oftentimes simply just need to get on the plane, oversee the business firsthand, network,
Yeah,
and simply have that drink with a client. Uh,
that's so true. Yeah, face-to-face interaction really makes a difference, I
Yeah, no,
think.
absolutely. I went to a first face-to-face event, I think a couple of weeks ago.
Hmm.
It was just so nice. Like you could actually tell how people enjoyed seeing everyone again. It was a bit awkward at first with the social distancing, like, but
Yeah,
they
true.
actually
You
made it.
never.
They had actually good system. They allowed people just to put like a traffic light system,
Hmm.
whether you're happy to to have a handshake or
Oh,
properly
that's smart,
distanced. So that was
actually.
kind of indicating from the distance if how
Yeah.
comfortable you were at. Yeah, and everybody had to be had to have like a covered sorry, the vaccination passes and so on. So it
Of
was
course.
actually really nicely organized. But yeah, we do see the need of being able to see people again.
Hmm.
and again, like, there are events, there are conferences. I mean, it would have been wonderful to go to VERGE21 in person. We can't do it today, but
Yes,
maybe next
definitely.
year. So overall, the business travel emissions still add up to a significant amount, and
Hmm.
appreciate other companies are in the same position as South Pole. And people question if we can afford to offset the emissions. And I would like to stress that aviation has always been a leader in innovation, and it's always
Hmm.
been a sector where big money is spent. And let's be honest, I mean, any passenger who can afford to get on the plane from let's say Heathrow to JFK can also afford to add a few dollars or pounds to pay for the climate impact or to reduce the climate impact of their journey.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and let's
Something.
and another one I need to add is also the cargo. Let's not forget the cargo, and I don't mean self-loading cargo as we often call the passengers. We do rely on the cargo. We rely on the smooth emergency services. We rely on perishable goods arriving safely and on time, and we notice how important the cargo on board was during the pandemic, carrying the vaccines, carrying the PPE. I mean, it is absolutely priceless, and it has to happen rapidly and smoothly.
Hmm.
But it all comes at the price, and this is why Southpole is here to support any activities leading to more sustainable travel and mitigating the climate impact. So
Hmm.
yes, we do have Corsia in place. We have our airport carbon accreditation scheme in place. We have voluntary carbon compensation programs. So we work with clients across the sector to decarbonize the industry.
Fantastic. Yeah. So it's great that you're already doing so much work within aviation. And specifically, our partnership focuses on sustainable aviation fuels. And, with Board Now, what you're doing is that you sign up to offtake a certain amount of fuel. And when the facility that we're working on is built, you will be able to take that fuel and reduce your emissions using that fuel. So I really wanted to ask you, why did you choose sustainable aviation fuels, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
how do you see them progressing within the aviation industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So again, like as a company, we do absolutely everything to reduce our carbon footprint, and we look at all possible ways to achieve it. As I mentioned earlier, we are already reducing our travel. Um, and and then we are trying to offset the emissions. And I'm not trying to kill aviation here because I absolutely love aviation. I mean, I traveled around the world
Yeah.
before, and I'm probably one of the most guilty here for all the emissions. So I absolutely want the aviation to prosper and be at good condition, and it will be. But we also need to appreciate it's going to grow, and up to 2050, it's going to be much bigger than before the pandemic. So coming back to Board Now, I mean, we see it as a program for sustainable travel, and an innovative way that allows corporates to help scale up the sustainable aviation fuel production by paying that premium. And SAF is an emerging industry, and it needs to be nurtured in order for it to reach critical mass quickly.
Mhm.
And we believe
Yeah.
that by putting the money in now, we help to speed up the process. And by paying a premium now uh, to nurture the SAF, we can accelerate the industry's growth and ensure it
Mhm.
becomes widely available and also more financially sustainable. And it also helps to set up a new standard, especially if the prices can be reduced by large-scale production plants. And
Mhm.
of course, we know that the biggest issue at the moment with SAF is the insufficient supply and the current high prices of SAF in comparison to Jet A1
Yeah.
fuel. So we really need to scale it up to narrow that gap.
Mhm.
And we believe that if we can help by paying the premium and supporting the SAF production, we believe this is the right thing to do. I mean, SAF can save, I mean, according to today's data, 70 to 80% of CO2 emissions. So supporting large scale production is really a no-brainer why companies should invest and join the Board Now program, in our opinion.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think maybe just to provide some context to our audience, who I don't know if they came to our earlier sessions, but yeah, sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF as we like to call it, at the moment is really facing a big problem that there just isn't enough supply to kind of satisfy the demand or make the changes that we really need to see in the industry. So at the moment, I think there's only one facility that's producing SAF on a continuous basis. And it's only producing around 15,000 tons of SAF per year, which is really nothing in comparison to how many
Yeah.
flights are being taken every year and, you know, how much people actually travel. So we really need companies like South Pole to invest in these kind of solutions. And it's one of the few solutions that's available currently and requires very little change to existing infrastructure. So once you have the fuel, you can just put it in existing fuel systems, and it's not very expensive to like bring it to the plane. The expensive part is just making the fuels and scaling them and making sure that they grow. So our Board Now program is really one way that we're helping to do that. And it's great having you on board as one of our partners.
Very happy to be on board with you. Absolutely, yes. I mean, as you said, we need to scale it up. It's from, I think, from what I know, it's 0.05 currently supply versus demand. So yes, so yeah, we've got a long way to go, and we need more people on board. Definitely.
Definitely, yes. So now, you know, you as South Pole have a lot of experience advising other companies on how to reduce their emissions and what steps to take in their sustainability strategy. So I wanted to ask you, what steps would you recommend taking for other companies who are starting to look at ways to reduce their aviation emissions? Let's say they're completely new, fresh, they haven't done anything in that area. What
Okay.
would you recommend for them to do?
Okay. So I think of course it all depends on the company, and it all depends on the travel policies in place already. And of course, there are different sizes of companies running different type of businesses. Some with really high volumes of travel, some with maybe lower. But in general, I think I would suggest analyzing your corporate travel, calculating the emissions associated with travel, and splitting them also by mode of transport. I mean, there's loads of calculators of emissions available online, or you can have an in-house calculator that will help you to understand the emissions associated per kilometer of different transport mode, and see what impact it makes actually, and it creates. And it really can be a real eye-opener when you see that one business class journey can emit as much carbon as an average person activities 1 year,
Yeah, it's
which
really
is
shocking
actually
when you see
shocking.
it.
Yes, if you think
Yeah.
that, I think I was comparing the other day return trip from Heathrow to JFK, and including the RFI, the radiative forcing index, which is the multiplier to cover the non-CO2 impact of aviation. It was like over 5 tons of CO2, and the average person activities in 1 year is about 6 tons of CO2.
No
Of course,
way.
there are different numbers depending where you live, but of
Yeah,
course, we're talking. Yeah, I mean it is a lot. If you think that sometimes
definitely.
pre-pandemic you will have regular passengers going to New York for a meeting once a week, just if you
Yeah,
think
or
about
maybe
those
even more.
emissions.
Not to
Yeah.
mention also, you know, traveling business class over
No, that's
economy
what I
class.
mean.
Yeah.
That would have been probably the travel policy where you, if the flight is over 5 hours long, you are entitled to travel in business class. I mean, a lot of companies in place. So I think first of all, analyze your corporate travel. Just see where it all goes. Actually, all those emissions. When possible, perhaps seek alternative modes of transport. For example, of course, you can go from Heathrow to JFK by train, but if you're traveling domestically within Europe or UK, where I'm based, you can always take a train for shorter trips. Also, I think it's really important to check your schedule and fly directly rather than indirectly, since the biggest fuel burn rate actually happens during the takeoff and landing. So it's really